The massive alien ship hung in space like a dark mountain. Its black hull stretched for miles, covered in strange symbols that glowed with cold blue light. Inside the ship's main chamber, Ambassador Zextar waited. His 6 arms moved slowly as he prepared the documents that would change humanity's fate forever. Admiral John Carter stood on the bridge of Earth's orbital command station. Through the large windows he could see the alien fleet. 12 different ships from 12 different worlds, all here to deliver the same message. His hands were steady, but his heart pounded as he watched the approaching shuttle. The shuttle docked with a soft thud. Carter walked to the meeting room where President Helen Brooks was already waiting. She looked calm, but Carter knew her well enough to see the worry in her eyes. They had been friends for 20 years, ever since they served together in the Mars Defense Force. The doors opened and 3 aliens walked in. Zextar came first, his tall, thin body moving with strange grace. Behind him came Commander Hasrak, looking like a giant insect with armor plates covering his body. The 3rd alien was small and round, with blue skin that seemed to shine under the lights. "Greetings, humans," Zexrak said. His voice came from a small device on his chest, translating his words into English. "I am Ambassador Zextar of the Galactic Coalition. We come with an offer of peace." President Brooks stepped forward. "We welcome peaceful contact with your people. Please, sit and tell us what you propose." The aliens took their seats around the large table. Zextar placed a small crystal device in the center. It projected images into the air above them. The first image showed a map of the galaxy with thousands of colored dots. "This is our territory," Zextar explained. "The Coalition has ruled these worlds for over 10,000 years. We have brought peace and order to countless species. We offer the same gift to humanity." Carter leaned forward. "What kind of gift?" Commander Hasrak spoke for the first time. His voice was harsh, like metal, scraping against stone. "Your species is young and violent. You have spread across 47 star systems in less than 300 years. This expansion troubles us." The images changed to show human colonies, ships moving between worlds, cities growing on distant planets. It looked impressive, but Carter knew the aliens saw it differently. "We offer you a choice," Zextar continued. "Join the Coalition as junior members, accept our guidance, reduce your colonies to 15 systems. In return, we will protect you and teach you our ways." President Brooks remained silent for a long moment. "And if we refuse?" The blue-skinned alien finally spoke. Its voice was soft, but somehow frightening. "Then we will be forced to remove the threat you represent. Your species will be destroyed completely." Carter felt anger rise in his chest. "You're threatening to kill billions of people?" "We prefer to call it maintaining galactic peace," Zextar said. "But yes, if necessary, we will eliminate your entire species. However, we hope you will be wise enough to accept our generous offer." The Chatia crystal device projected new images. These showed the Coalition's military power. Thousands of warships, each one larger than Earth's biggest vessel. Weapons that could destroy planets. Shields that could stop any human attack. "We do not wish to use force," Commander Hasrak said. "But we have done so before when young species refused to see reason. The Kethmori chose to fight us. Their homeworld is now a ball of glass. The Vendaki also resisted. Their species no longer exists." President Brooks stood up slowly. "We need time to consider your offer." "Of course," Zextar replied. "You have 72 hours to decide. After that, we will assume you have chosen destruction over wisdom." The meeting ended quickly after that. The aliens returned to their shuttle, leaving the humans alone in the room. Carter looked at his old friend and saw the same thought in her eyes that was in his mind. "They're not really offering us a choice," he said quietly. "No, they're not," Brooks agreed. "Slavery or death. Those are our options." Over the next day, messages flew between Earth and all the human colonies. Emergency meetings were held on every world. Carter found himself in the war room, staring at tactical displays that showed just how hopeless their situation was. Colonel Sam Mitchell, Carter's chief of staff pointed to the screen. Look at these numbers, sir. Their smallest ship has more firepower than our entire fleet. Their shields can stop anything we have. A conventional war would be over in hours. Captain Lisa Ford, commander of the Earth Defense Force, nodded grimly. We've run every simulation, every battle plan. They all end the same way, total defeat. But Carter was thinking about something else. He remembered stories from Earth's history, how weaker forces had sometimes defeated stronger ones, not through direct confrontation, but through different kinds of warfare. What if we don't fight their ships, or he asked suddenly. Mitchell looked confused. Sir? What if we ignore their military entirely? What if we target something else? Dr. Karen White, Earth's expert on alien biology, had been quiet during the meeting. Now she spoke up. I've been studying the data we collected during first contact. Each species in the coalition has specific biological needs. Very specific. Carter turned to her. Go on. The Velnari breathe a gas mixture that's toxic to most other species. The Zethkari need certain minerals that only exist on a few worlds. The Mordun live in gas giant atmospheres that require exact pressure and temperature. What are you suggesting? Ford asked. Dr. White's eyes were bright with a terrible idea. What if we don't try to defeat their military? What if we just kill them all? The room fell silent. Carter could hear his own heartbeat. It was a monstrous thought. But as he looked at the tactical displays showing the coalition's overwhelming power, he realized it might be their only chance. How long would we need to prepare? He asked quietly. 6 months, maybe less, Dr. White replied. We have their biological data. We know where their homeworlds are. We could engineer targeted weapons for each species. President Brooks entered the room at that moment. She had been meeting with the other world leaders. The vote is unanimous, she announced. Every human colony has decided. We reject their offer. Carter looked at her. All of them? All of them. Mars, Europa, Titan, New Geneva, all 47 colonies. They'd rather die free than live as slaves. The Admiral nodded slowly. It was what he had expected. Humans had always been stubborn that way. Then we have work to do, he said. Dr. White, begin your research immediately. Colonel Mitchell, start moving our assets into position. Captain Ford, prepare the fleet for a very different kind of war. As the meeting broke up, Carter stayed behind to watch the alien ships through the window. In 72 hours, those ships would expect an answer. They would get one, but not the answer they were expecting. The humans had been offered peace, through submission. Instead, they would choose something else entirely, something that would shock the galaxy and change the balance of power forever. Admiral Carter smiled grimly as he watched the enemy fleet. They had no idea what was coming. The clock on the wall showed 18 hours until the deadline. Dr. Karen White had not slept since the meeting ended. Her laboratory on Luna was filled with data screens showing alien biology reports. Her team of scientists worked around her, their faces pale with exhaustion and fear. The Velnari respiratory system is fascinating, she said to her assistant, Dr. Ben Clark. They need exactly the right mix of gases to survive. Change the balance by just 2%, and they die within minutes. Ben looked at the data with horror. Karen, what we're talking about is genocide. Not just killing soldiers, but entire species. Dr. White stopped typing and looked at him. Ben, they're planning to do the same to us. The only difference is they're calling it mercy. On Mars, Governor Paul Newman was having a different conversation. He stood in his office looking out at the red landscape where human cities stretched to the horizon. His aide, Lieutenant Jake Williams, had just brought him the latest reports from Earth. Sir, maybe we should reconsider, Jake said carefully. The coalition has millions of ships. We have maybe 1,000 that could fight in space. The math is simple. Newman turned from the window. You think we should surrender? I think we should live, Jake replied. Even as slaves, we'd still be alive. We could find ways to resist later, maybe gain our freedom over time. Have you read Dr. White's report about the other species? Newman asked. The ones who surrendered to the coalition? Jake shook his head. Newman pulled up a file on his computer screen. Images appeared showing alien worlds under Coalition control. The creatures there looked broken, hopeless. They worked in mines and factories, their bodies changed by genetic modification to make them better slaves. The Hethadari were artists and poets, Newman said quietly. Now they're modified to be perfect workers. They can't even remember their old culture. The Yiltanto were explorers who loved the stars. Now they're afraid to leave their assigned planets. Jake stared at the images. My God. The Coalition doesn't just want us to surrender, Newman continued. They want to erase who we are, turn us into something else, something that will never threaten them again. Back on Earth, Admiral Carter was meeting with his top commanders. The room was thick with cigarette smoke and the smell of too much coffee. Captain Lisa Ford had been awake for 36 hours straight, planning for a war unlike any in human history. The conventional approach is hopeless, she said, pointing to the tactical display. But Dr. White's plan might work. We just need to get close enough to their home worlds to deploy the weapons. Colonel Sam Mitchell looked worried. The moral implications are staggering. We're talking about killing billions of innocent civilians. Are they innocent? Carter asked. Every species in the Coalition benefits from the slavery of others. They all vote to support the system that keeps weaker races under control. Captain Ford nodded. Our intelligence shows that Coalition citizens live in luxury while their slave species do all the work. They know about the genocide of species that refuse to surrender. They approve of it. The door opened and President Brooks entered with her security chief, Agent Mary Johnson. The president looked tired but determined. I've just finished speaking. With the leaders of all our colonies, Brooks announced. The vote is still unanimous. We fight no matter the cost. Agent Johnson stepped forward. Ma'am, I have to ask, are we really going to use biological weapons against entire populations? Brooks was quiet for a long moment. Mary, do you have children? Yes, ma'am. 2 daughters. I want you to imagine them as slaves, modified so they can't think clearly, forced to work in alien factories until they die. That's what the Coalition is offering our children. Mary's face went pale. I understand, ma'am. Dr. White's voice came through the communication system. Admiral Carter, we're ready to begin the first phase. We've identified the key biological weaknesses of all 12 Coalition species. Carter activated the screen. Dr. White appeared, looking exhausted but excited. Behind her, scientists were working with samples in sealed containers. Tell us what you found, Carter said. Each species has evolved on worlds with very specific conditions, Dr. White explained. The Zethkari are silicon-based life forms. They need certain trace elements to maintain their crystalline structure. Without them, they literally fall apart. She pulled up another image. The Morden live in gas giant atmospheres. They're basically living balloons. Introduce the right chemical compound into their atmosphere and they lose buoyancy. Every single one of their cities would fall. Colonel Mitchell leaned forward. How long to weaponize this information? For the biological agents, maybe a week. For the atmospheric compounds, 2 weeks. The hard part will be delivery. Captain Ford had been studying the deployment problem. We can't fight their fleets directly, but we don't need to. We use civilian ships, freighters, exploration vessels, anything that can carry the weapons without looking military. They'll be expecting military attacks, Carter agreed. They won't pay attention to civilian traffic until it's too late. President Brooks made the final decision. Dr. White, you have authorization to begin weapons development. Captain Ford, start recruiting civilian ships. We'll need volunteers for what amounts to suicide missions. On the alien flagship, Ambassador Zextar was reviewing reports from his intelligence officers. Commander Hisarak stood beside him, his insect-like features showing confusion. The humans are behaving strangely, Hisarak said. Our sensors show increased activity around their research facilities, but no military preparations. Zextar was not concerned. They're probably trying to develop new weapons, a waste of time. Nothing they create can penetrate our shields. What if they're planning something else? Hisarak asked. Like what? They have no choice but to surrender, or die. There is no third option. But Zextar was wrong. In laboratories across human space, scientists were working on weapons the Coalition had never imagined. Not weapons to destroy ships, but weapons to destroy entire species. Dr. White stood in her laboratory, looking at the samples that would soon become instruments of genocide. She felt sick, but she also felt determined. The Coalition had started this war by threatening to exterminate humanity. Now they would discover what humans were capable of when faced with extinction. "Ben," she called to her assistant, "begin synthesis of the Velnari respiratory inhibitor. We'll start with them." As the deadline approached, both sides prepared for war. The Coalition expected a short, decisive battle followed by human surrender. The humans were preparing something very different, something that would shock the galaxy and prove that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their numbers. It was their willingness to do whatever it took to survive. The countdown continued. In less than 18 hours, the Coalition would have their answer. But it would not be the answer they expected. Admiral Carter looked out at the stars and thought about the future. Win or lose, humanity would never be the same after this war. They were about to cross a line that could never be uncrossed. But sometimes he thought that was the price of freedom. The 72 hours were up. Ambassador Zextar sat in the meeting room aboard Earth's orbital station, confident that the humans would surrender. Commander Hasrak stood behind him, watching the humans enter the room with his cold insect eyes. "Admiral." Carter walked in first, followed by President Brooks. Their faces showed no fear, which surprised Zextar slightly. He had expected them to look defeated. "Have you made your decision?" Zextar asked, his translator device making his voice sound calm and patient. President Brooks stepped forward. "Yes, we have. We reject both of your options." Commander Hasrak's mandibles clicked together, which was how his species laughed. "You reject surrender and you reject death? How amusing. What is your third choice?" Admiral Carter smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "We choose total war." The aliens looked at each other. Zextar's 6 arms moved in what humans had learned was a gesture of confusion. "Total war? You mean you will fight our fleets? Your primitive ships against our advanced technology?" "No," Carter replied. "We're not going to fight your ships at all." "Then how do you plan to wage war?" Hisarak demanded. Carter's smile grew wider and more frightening. "We're going to kill every single member of every species in your coalition, not your soldiers, not your fleets, your entire species. Every man, woman, and child on every world you control." The room fell silent. Zextar's translator device made a small sound, as if it was having trouble processing what it had heard. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, less confident. "That is impossible. You do not have the technology to threaten our homeworlds." President Brooks opened a folder and placed photographs on the table. They showed alien worlds from space. But these were not normal photographs. They were detailed plans showing atmosphere processors, water supplies, and population centers. "We've been studying you for 3 years," Brooks said quietly. "Ever since we first detected your ships. We know where you live. We know what you breathe. We know what you eat. We know how you die." Dr. Karen White entered the room carrying a small metal case. She set it on the table and opened it. Inside were 12 small vials, each one labeled with the name of a coalition species. "Each of these contains a biological agent specifically designed for one of your species," she explained. "The Velnari agent attacks your respiratory system. Within hours of exposure, every Velnari in the affected area stops breathing." She picked up another vial. "This one is for the Zethkari. It dissolves the molecular bonds in your crystalline structure. Your bodies literally fall apart." Commander Hasrak stepped back from the table. "This is impossible. You cannot create such weapons in just 3 days." "We didn't create them in 3 days," Carter said. "We've been working on them for 3 years, ever since we realized that first contact might not be peaceful." Zextar's voice was now shaking. "You are bluffing. Even if such weapons exist, you cannot deliver them to our worlds. Our fleets protect our systems." Captain Lisa Ford entered the room at that moment. "Actually, we can. Right now there are human ships approaching every coalition homeworld. Cargo ships, exploration vessels, even passenger liners. They all carry the same cargo. She activated a small device, and the room filled with holographic displays showing star maps. Red dots marked the locations of human ships throughout coalition space. The beauty of it is that we look harmless, Ford continued. Your ships are watching for military threats. They're not paying attention to civilian traffic. Dr. White picked up the vial labeled for the Velnari. This amount is enough to sterilize your entire homeworld. We've calculated the atmospheric distribution patterns. Within 72 hours of release, every Velnari will be dead. Zextar stood up so quickly that his chair fell over. This is madness. You are talking about the murder of billions of innocent people. Admiral Carter's expression grew cold. Innocent? Your people vote for the leaders who order the genocide of species that refuse to surrender. Your economies depend on slave labor from conquered worlds. Your children grow up believing that other species exist only to serve you. That is different, Hesrock protested. We bring order to the galaxy. We prevent chaos. You bring slavery and death, President Brooks replied. And now you'll experience what your victims felt. Dr. White closed the case. The release will begin in exactly 1 hour, unless you agree to our terms. What terms? Zextar asked desperately. Carter stood up and walked to the window overlooking the coalition fleet. Complete and immediate withdrawal from all human space. Dissolution of the coalition government, liberation of all slave species, and surrender of your military technology to human control. That is impossible, Hisrock said. We cannot abandon our civilization. Then your civilization will die. Brooks said simply. All of it. Every world, every city, every individual, gone. On the flagship of the coalition fleet, emergency alarms were ringing. Scanner operators were reporting the same thing from across the galaxy. Human ships had appeared near every coalition world simultaneously. Captain Steve Rogers stood on the bridge of the cargo ship New Horizon as it approached the Velnari homeworld. His ship looked like any other civilian vessel, but its cargo hold contained enough biological agent to kill every living thing on the planet below. Are you sure about this, Captain? His first officer asked nervously. Rogers looked at the blue and green world filling their view screen. It was beautiful, with white clouds swirling over continents full of Velnari cities. Soon, if the orders came, it would be a dead world. I have children, Rogers said quietly. If we don't do this, the coalition will make them slaves. Yes, I'm sure. Back in the meeting room, Zextar was speaking rapidly into a communication device, trying to contact his fleet commanders. The responses he received made his face go pale. They confirm it, he said to Husrak. Human ships are positioned at every coalition world. If they release those weapons, our entire civilization dies, Husrak finished. How did we not see this coming? Admiral Carter turned from the window. Because you thought we would fight like you fight. You thought we would follow your rules. But we don't have rules when our survival is at stake. President Brooks checked her watch. 45 minutes until release. What is your decision? Zextar looked at his fellow coalition members. They had come here expecting to dictate terms to a primitive species. Instead, they were facing extinction. We need time to consider, he said. You have no time, Carter replied. The same time limit you gave us, 44 minutes and counting. Dr. White reopened her case and held up the Velnari vial again. This is what you offered us, death or slavery. Now you get to choose between the same options. The coalition representatives huddled together, speaking in their own languages. The humans could not understand the words, but they could hear the panic in their voices. As the minutes ticked by, reports came in from across the galaxy. Human agents were in position. The weapons were ready. All that remained was the final order. Admiral Carter looked at the alien delegates who had come here so confidently. They had thought they were dealing with a young, weak species that would submit to their will. Instead, they had awakened something that would change the galaxy forever. They had threatened humanity with extinction, and now they were about to learn what extinction really meant. The countdown continued. In less than 40 minutes, the coalition would discover that humans, when pushed to the edge, would push back with everything they had. And sometimes, everything was enough. The timer showed 30 minutes remaining when Zextar finally spoke. His voice was shaking as he looked at the humans across the table. "We accept your terms," he said quietly. "We will withdraw from human space immediately." Admiral Carter shook his head. "Too late for that. You had your chance for a peaceful solution. Now we finish what you started." President Brooks pressed a button on her communication device. "All units, this is Eagle 1. Execute Operation Prometheus. Repeat, execute Operation Prometheus." Across the galaxy, human ships received the order. Captain Steve Rogers watched his navigation officer prepare the biological weapon for release over the Velnari homeworld. The planet below them held 8 billion alien lives. "Weapon armed and ready, Captain," the officer reported. Rogers hesitated for just a moment. Then he thought about his daughter back on Earth and what the coalition would do to her if they, 1. Release the weapon. A small pod ejected from the New Horizon and fell toward the planet's atmosphere. It looked harmless, like a piece of space debris, but inside was death designed specifically for the Velnari species. On the Zethkari, Crystal World, Commander Jake Williams watched similar pods falling toward the surface. The crystalline beings below had no idea what was coming. Their cities sparkled like jewels in the alien sunlight. "This feels wrong," his weapons officer said. "They're not soldiers. They're families down there." Williams looked at the tactical display showing coalition ships throughout human space. "Those families voted for the government that wants to enslave our children. They've had 1,000 years to choose a different path." The first effects began showing within hours. On the Velnari world, emergency broadcasts filled the communication channels. The breathing gas that every Velnari needed was becoming toxic. Hospitals overflowed with victims who could not get enough air. Zextar watched the reports coming in with horror. His own people were dying, gasping for breath that would not come. "Please," he begged the humans, "stop this madness. We surrender completely." "Surrender to whom?" Admiral Carter asked. "In a few hours, there won't be anyone left to surrender. Commander." Sirac tried to contact his fleet, ordering them to attack Earth immediately. But the human agents had been busy. Communication networks across coalition space were failing. Power grids were shutting down. The infrastructure that supported their advanced civilization was crumbling. Dr. Karen White monitored the biological weapons from her laboratory. The agents were working exactly as designed. Each one targeted the specific weakness of its intended species. The Morden were losing buoyancy in their gas giant cities and falling to their deaths. The rock-eating Githval found their digestive systems failing as human-made compounds poisoned their food supply. "How long until complete extinction?" President Brooks asked during a secure communication. "Varies by species," Dr. White replied. "The Velnari will be gone in 48 hours. The Zethkari are already starting to dissolve. The longest might be the Takvari, but even they won't last more than a week." On Mars, Governor Paul Newman received reports from human agents throughout coalition space. The aliens who had seemed so powerful just days ago were now dying worlds. Their advanced technology meant nothing when they could not breathe, could not eat, could not survive in their own environments. "Sir," Lieutenant Jake Williams reported, "we're getting surrender offers from 3 more coalition species. They're offering to serve humanity in exchange for antidotes to the biological weapons." Newman looked at the data. These were species that had never threatened humans directly. They had simply been part of the coalition system. "What are the President's orders?" "No antidotes, no mercy. Complete extinction for all coalition species." The war was not going as anyone had expected. The coalition's mighty fleets found themselves fighting an enemy they could not target. Human civilian ships had delivered their deadly cargo and then disappeared into space. There was nothing left to shoot at. Commander Hasrak made one desperate attempt to save his people. He ordered the coalition fleet to attack Earth's orbital station, hoping to force the humans to provide antidotes. But as his ships approached, they found something unexpected. Earth's space around the station was filled with a strange gas. As soon as the alien ships entered the cloud, their crews began dying. The humans had weaponized Earth's entire defensive perimeter. Impossible, Isarak gasped as his own breathing became difficult. How did they turn space itself into a weapon? Dr. White's voice came over the communication system. We studied your biology very carefully, Commander. Earth's atmosphere naturally produces compounds that are harmless to humans, but deadly to your species. We just concentrated them around our defenses. The coalition ships tried to retreat, but the gas cloud followed them. Human drones were spreading the weapon through space, creating a dead zone around Earth that no alien could survive. Back in the meeting room, Zextar collapsed. His 6 arms shook as his body began shutting down. Even here, on the human station, the air had been modified to slowly poison coalition species. You are monsters, he whispered. We offered you peace. Admiral Carter looked down at the dying alien. You offered us slavery. There's a difference. President Brooks checked the latest reports. Status update. Velnari homeworld 90% casualties. Zethkari world showing complete structural collapse. Morden cities have fallen from their atmospheres. Estimated time to complete coalition extinction, 60 hours. The few coalition ships that remained were now fleeing human space. But they carried death with them. Human agents had contaminated their life support systems. They would die before they reached safety. Dr. White appeared on the communication screen. Ma'am, we're receiving broadcasts from several coalition worlds. They're begging for mercy, offering anything we want. What are they offering? Brooks asked. Complete technology transfer. All their scientific knowledge. Their entire industrial base. Some are offering to modify themselves genetically to serve as human slaves. Carter shook his head. Too late for bargains. They made their choice when they threatened us with extinction. Across the galaxy, the dying continued. Entire civilizations that had ruled for thousands of years were ending in a matter of days. The coalition that had seemed so powerful was revealing its greatest weakness. They had grown soft from centuries of easy victories over weaker species. They had never faced an enemy like humanity, an enemy that would choose mutual destruction over surrender, an enemy that would kill billions to save their own freedom. As the 4th day of the war began, the galaxy was changing. The coalition's slave species were breaking free as their masters died. Ancient grievances were being settled. The order that had existed for millennia was collapsing. In the meeting room, Zextar drew his last breath. The ambassador who had come to offer humanity a choice between slavery and death had become the first victim of humanity's third option. Admiral Carter looked at the dead alien and felt no satisfaction. Only the grim knowledge that this was what survival looked like when pushed to the ultimate extreme. The countdown to extinction continued. Soon, humanity would stand alone as the galaxy's dominant power. But the price of that dominance would haunt them forever. They had chosen total war, and total war was exactly what they had achieved. 2 years had passed since the coalition died. Admiral John Carter stood in his new office on the space station, orbiting what had once been the Velnari homeworld. Through the large window, he could see the planet below. It was green and blue, again, but now it was empty of its original inhabitants. Human colonies were growing on the surface. New cities rose where alien metropolises had once stood. The air that had killed the Velnari was perfect for human lungs. Earth's children were inheriting worlds that had taken other species millions of years to build. President Helen Brooks entered the office. She wore new insignia now. The title on her uniform read Galactic Empress. It was not a title she had wanted, but it was one the galaxy had forced upon her. The quarterly reports are ready, she said, placing a tablet on Carter's desk. Human population is now at 15 billion across 47 worlds. Production is up 30% from last year. Carter scrolled through the data. Humans were thriving in their new galactic empire. The coalition's technology had been reverse-engineered and improved. Their industrial facilities had been converted to human use. Their knowledge had become humanity's knowledge. What about the survivors? He asked. Brooks's expression grew serious. 3 species remain: the Kalaneth, the Yilvos, and the Fendari. Total population across all 3 groups is about 2 million individuals. These were the coalition species that had shown mercy to other races during their expansion. Dr. Karen White had convinced the human leadership to spare them, but only barely. They now lived on reservation worlds under strict human supervision. Any problems with them? Carter asked. None. They're too terrified to cause trouble. Most of them spend their time trying to prove how useful they can be to us. A communication alert sounded. Captain Lisa Ford appeared on the screen from her flagship, the Earth's Vengeance. She was now Supreme Commander of Human Space Forces, controlling a fleet built from captured coalition technology. Sir, we have a situation at the edge of our territory. Long-range sensors have detected ships from an unknown species. They appear to be exploratory vessels. Carter leaned forward. How many ships? 12 vessels, small size. They've been observing our outer colonies for 3 days. No hostile actions, but they're clearly studying us. Brooks activated her communication device. Colonel Sam Mitchell. Report to Admiral Carter's office immediately. Mitchell arrived within minutes. He was now Director of Galactic Intelligence, responsible for monitoring threats to human dominance. His job was to ensure that no species would ever again pose a challenge to humanity. What do we know about these new aliens? Brooks asked. Mitchell pulled up a holographic display. Preliminary scans suggest they're called the Nexari, carbon-based life forms, roughly humanoid. Their technology appears to be early spaceflight level, maybe 50 years behind where we were when we first met the Coalition. Are they a threat? Carter asked. Not currently, but they're expanding into space at a rapid rate. Our models suggest they could become a significant power within a century if left unchecked. Dr. White's voice came through the communication system from her research station. I've been monitoring their transmissions. They seem to be a peaceful species focused on exploration and trade. Carter remembered when humans had also been peaceful explorers, before the Coalition had taught them the true nature of galactic politics. What are your recommendations? Brooks asked Mitchell. We have 3 options. First, make contact and attempt to integrate them into our empire as junior partners. Second, monitor them and take action if they become a threat. Third, eliminate them now while they're still weak. The room fell silent. Carter thought about the decision they faced. 2 years ago, he would have chosen the first option without hesitation. But the war had changed him. It had changed all of humanity. What would the Coalition have done? He asked. Given them the same choice they gave us, Brooks replied. Surrender or die. Captain Ford spoke from the screen. Sir, we could end this threat easily. A few biological weapons and the Nexari would be gone within a week. They'd never know what hit them. Dr. White's voice carried a note of concern. Are we really going to become exactly like the Coalition? Is that what we fought for? Carter stood and walked to the window. Below, human children played in parks built on the ruins of alien cities. They were innocent, but they were also the inheritors of a galaxy won through genocide. The difference, he said slowly, is that we know what happens to species that show weakness in this galaxy. The Coalition taught us that lesson. A new voice entered the conversation. It was Ambassador Kevin Clark, the sole survivor of the original Velnari species. He had been modified genetically to serve as a translator and cultural advisor. His existence was a living reminder of what happened to those who opposed humanity. The Nexari communications suggest they are forming a coalition of their own, Clark said in his hollow voice. 7 species have already joined their alliance. They call it the Peaceful Expansion Initiative. The irony was not lost on anyone in the room. Another coalition was forming, just as threatening as the first. Brooks made the decision that would define humanity's future. Colonel Mitchell, prepare a message for the Nexari. Tell them that this galaxy is under human protection. They have 72 hours to withdraw from our border regions and submit to human authority. And if they refuse? Mitchell asked. Then we show them the same mercy the Coalition showed us, Carter replied. None. Dr. White protested. We don't have to become monsters to survive. We already are monsters, Brooks said quietly. The question is whether we're monsters who live free or monsters who die as slaves. The message was sent within the hour. Across space, it traveled to the Nexari homeworld, where leaders gathered to discuss this strange ultimatum from an unknown species called humans. On Earth, children attended school where they learned about the Great War against the Coalition. Their teachers, like Mary Johnson, taught them that humanity had won through courage and determination. They did not mention the biological weapons or the genocide of entire species. The children learned that sometimes peace could only be achieved through superior force. They learned that mercy was a luxury that strong species could afford but weak species could not. They learned that in a galaxy full of potential enemies, the only safety came from making sure those enemies could never threaten you. As the new 72-hour deadline began, humanity waited for the Nexari response. Carter hoped they would be wise enough to surrender. He had no desire to add another 12 species to the list of the extinct, but if they chose to fight, humanity was ready. The galaxy had taught them that survival meant being willing to do anything, no matter how terrible, to protect their own. The children of Earth played in their parks, unaware that their future was being decided by aliens light years away. But their parents watched the stars and waited, knowing that the galaxy was not big enough for two dominant species. Peace, as humanity had learned, was something you took, not something that was given. The countdown began again. In 72 hours, the galaxy would discover whether the Nexari were wise enough to choose survival over pride. Admiral Carter looked out at the stars and wondered if humanity would ever again know true peace, or if they were doomed to rule through fear for the rest of time. Either way, they would survive, and in the end, that was all that mattered.